Perfect.
We were like both glitching out.
Yeah.
Um, all right. Good afternoon, everybody. We are here with Kyle Broussard, aka the Virtuous Skinhead. We coined it right here with the UTEP College Republicans, like just some recognition for the coining. Um, but he's a great guy. If you haven't checked him out, you should. Yeah, I think. Are you still Kyle Broussard on YouTube?
Yeah, I'm still Kyle Broussard on YouTube, but I do have a Twitter handle, and it's the @Virtuous Skinhead, as well as I'm actually in the middle of building my website for a newly created movement in the centrist mentality of getting away from the hate and the discord that is currently populating the system, and it's called Legions of Peace.
That is awesome. Now, I remember saying it jokingly that maybe you should call yourself the Virtuous Skinhead, and it's because so many people see you and they see your appearance, and white, that's one strike, and then you're bald because of was it Appalachia?
Alopecia, yeah.
Alopecia, there we go. And that's the second strike, and it's just like, well, and he's kind of tall, so
Appalachia is a mountain range.
Yeah, so it's just all bad optics, I guess. But every video I see you in, you're either A, trying to calm people down, B, when shit's hit the fan, you're trying to get people out of there if they're badly injured. I remember you were pulling out an Antifa guy. I think this was in Portland.
Yep.
There was a brawl at a park, and this guy, and they're trying to attack you as you're trying to take him away from the fight. And yeah. I just can you tell me anything about that? What the hell was the rationale behind attacking a guy trying to get someone to a peaceful area?
So my entire movement is the fact that regardless of the political disagreements that we can still treat each other as humans. I was actually on the Dory Monson show a little while ago, and that's here in Washington State. It's like Cairo FM. It's like the local radio. And it all comes down to treating each other as humans, as Americans. On May Day, you probably saw me. It was literally everywhere for a good while, which was me using weed to bring together pro-Trump and anti-Trump people. I'm the May Day peace joint guy. I almost used their moniker for me, which was Gandhi of Seattle, but I did choose to take yours and keep it with the Virtuous Skinhead. But basically what had happened down in Portland on that day, that had actually been, I think, the second or third time I'd been down to Portland for a major rally. And every single time I go down there, it is mainly to keep as much peace as possible. I can understand defending yourself. I can understand being angry, but I cannot understand why you would exude violence against another person simply because of a political disagreement. And this is stemmed primarily from Antifa. The thing is that they have become emboldened, especially after the most recent Charlottesville incident. But before that, the incident in question was actually opened up with a flying jump kick from Antifa against a Hispanic kid wearing a Kekistani flag.
Oh.
In the middle of it, there's actually a video of me carrying 2 cases of water that I was going to give to them because it was a 95-degree weather day. I was actually giving 2 cases of water to the group of Antifa as a show of good faith. Like, listen, we stay hydrated. We want you to be okay. So regardless of any kind of peace, I don't see, there are small groups inside of Antifa, like small onesies and twosies who actually want peace. But the overwhelming majority, there's too many people who are just dying for violence. And they take any opportunity they can to perpetrate it. The person who I ended up carrying out of the fight, he had been, I understand self-defense on the side of Patriot Prayer, but when you have multiple groups, not just Patriot Prayer, but the 3%ers, the Proud Boys, and all the other groups that are involved, you can't keep track of every single one. And this kid and yes, this guy was kind of a jerk. He had been provoking the entire time, but he's young and he's allowed to be young and stupid. But he got his face punched in quite a bit and had a big gushing wound on the side of his face, and he could barely stand. So I ended up grabbing him and throwing his arm around my shoulder and it's like, get out of the way, let me get him out to safety. And I actually ended up putting him on the ground and helping aid the wound on his face. I was actually covered on the front page of the Blaze for that one. That was pretty entertaining.
And I think what's funny is that, I mean, you're almost at like meme status, you know, where it's like everyone thinks I'm a skinhead on this side, the other side thinks I'm just like this weird guy who shows up everywhere. But you're there to just keep the peace. And what's great about it is it's a sea of cell phones and like selfie sticks and stuff, and you're the only one without a phone out on the front lines, but you have the most footage out like everywhere.
Yeah.
But none of it's like really on your channel except that one time where that guy kept telling you to center yourself.
Yeah,
And
that was actually when I first started. I did that mainly because here at the University of Washington, Seattle, I'm actually here currently. My apologies. The school is having an announcement.
no,
When this had first started, it was just simply the Women of Color conference that's on my channel, and they were just basically, I was going there to film, just simply as like, hey, what's going on? I was kind of brought in by the whole, like, we're filming SJWs and we're filming some of the nonsense that goes on at the college, but I didn't actually think that they would cast me out simply because of the way they look. And it just kind of went on worse and worse and worse from there. That brought up all the way to Durst the Worst video, where I'm being called a Nazi, and that had ended up having like 560,000 views on it. So, but I don't actually end up filming a lot because I don't see the inherent value. I find myself more valuable in the lines of being a rational voice amongst a sea of irrationality. And I want to make peace popular again. It's been kind of a catchphrase of mine as of recently, that peace is not popular. I recently spoke at the rally for the Patriot Prayer Group here in Seattle and Westlake. And regardless, no matter what I said, okay, people will still come out of the woodworks. There was a woman named Amy Wolf on my Facebook page when I was talking about the Charlottesville issue. She said that she followed me for 3 hours trying to provoke anger and violence and trying to pick fights with everyone. And I said, in the sea of cell phones out here, why don't you have a single shred of evidence?
Mm-hmm.
And yet my speech, which is seen by 500 people, only talks about peace. The guy who actually speaks for peace is never covered by the mainstream media. And I think that that's their motive. They want to divide, they want to disrupt, and they want to tear down the system that is inevitably peaceful. I actually listened to Rob Schneider on Twitter the other day, which is, if you talk to your neighbor, we are not as divided as the mainstream media is going to present us as. We can talk, we can have dialogue. Just stop thinking that just because a person has an opposing view that they mean death upon you and anybody like you. It's nonsense.
Yeah, you know what I find the most interesting about filming everyone is the recent string of attacks that Antifa has been laying against journalists. And the thing I find the strangest is that they will, like Airliner World and more, he just had a video come out this morning where he's following like a little communist march, and they're like, why are you supporting the enemy? And I couldn't help but think, if he's just filming you, how is that support for the opposition? I mean, wouldn't that be, like, if your message is so positive, wouldn't that be the best case scenario, that you get the most coverage possible? Like, I don't understand the rationale there, unless they do realize that they're on the fringe or something. But it's very strange to me, because they got quite a bit of good press despite attacking journalists this week.
If you actually look at it, you know full well that they realize that if they're filmed, they're going to be brought out as what they truly are, which is a violent fringe group who means to destroy the system through anarchy. It reminds me of the Ben Shapiro and Cenk Uygur debate.
Yeah, Uygur.
And notice one of the arguments that Ben Shapiro had was, what do you think Bernie Sanders would care more about? Would he care more if you gave him $10,000, or if you spent an election or an entire election cycle, kissing his ass? And that's what they know full well. They would much rather, if they were doing something benevolent, like myself, like if you guys want to cover me, more power to you, and I encourage it, because my message I am proud of. I am willing to stand up for my message. I am willing to show my face behind my message. These members of Antifa, one, are definitely not willing to show their face on camera, and two, they're not proud of what they're doing, more than likely, and it's because they know what they're doing is awful. They know it's against what people would consider acceptable behavior. And that's the way they want their utopia. And that's the paradox of the alliance between the left and Islam and a hope and like violent Islamism and a couple of the others, is the fact that they realize they have to dismantle and destroy the entire system in hopes that they're the victor in the end, that will build and usher in their utopia, either through a theocracy or Islam, or through the communist utopia, or an anarchic state through the Antifa people. So we have three traditionally warring factions who are trying to ally themselves in hopes that they're the victor in the end.
Yeah, and what I found really strange about the Charlotte coverage is, you know, they called all of the people. Now it's just blanket, they're all Nazis. When, you know, there was white nationalists, there was ethno-identitarians, there was, or ethno-state proponents, there was like, what was it, Oath Keepers, and then some other groups. And then there was like the Sig Heil idiots.
Yeah.
That just make everything look
like weirdos.
Yeah, but they were not afraid to be filmed at all. Like, they were just like, yeah, whatever. And what I find so strange is that people like Tariq Nasheed, or, you know, some other race baiter, they're like, oh, well, you know, white supremacist deniers are everywhere. And it's like, no, these guys are out and proud about it. So like it makes me think, like, will this eventually come back to bite them? Like, showing, yeah, the real racists don't care that you call them racist. Like, yeah, and it's, I'm not sure what exactly the actual repercussions are going to be of this madness that we've been seeing this week. But so far, it looks like, yeah, the term racist is starting to lose power, like actual power, not just in the hardcore political realm, but like actual mainstream people.
Well, we already saw that happening. People who have been following these events for the last 2 years are already aware that that was happening. There's nowhere to go when you've used the term Nazi for someone like Dave Rubin, who is a gay, married, weed-smoking Jew. Mm-hmm. Like, you can't use the same word to compare him with people who are mowing down people in opposition with a Dodge Challenger. There's nowhere to go here. What are you going to do? Are you going to say that Dave Rubin, the guy that you described as this word, is the exact same person as a guy who is open about hating anybody who is not a white Protestant with a swastika on his chest? Are you going to tell me that these people are the same? There's a reason that you've discredited, or that nobody believes you. You have cried Nazi too often when you have been absolutely objectively wrong. And now we have no faith in you. And I think if you were to get away from the mainstream media, which is by and large actually rule number one of the Legions of Peace, is disconnect from the mainstream media. They do no good. They are doing more harm than good, and I find it disruptive and destructive to the entire United States as a whole. We can come together, but we need to get rid of listening to the provocateurs. If you think Milo is bad, CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, and Breitbart are 10 times worse.
Well, you know, something interesting about Fox is they showed their true colors the other day with the Barcelona attack. And the headline read something like, or the tagline, it was like, if you want to be free and secure, you need to give up some of your liberties. And it was like, that is startlingly authoritarian right there.
Yeah.
And I think it's Benjamin Franklin who said, if you're prepared to give up any liberties or something, you're not really free.
Those who would surrender freedom for security deserve neither and will lose both.
There we go. Thank you for saving me from butchering a quote for longer than I already did. But
I butcher quotes all the time.
Yeah, and it was kind of like, yeah, I guess this is the neocon coming out of them. They've never really been as far right as I guess the left would say they are, because it's just like, well, a lot of the GOP base wouldn't agree with a statement like that.
I can't remember who had said it, but I think it was Ben Shapiro. I'm not 100% sure. Either that or Steven Crowder had actually said that, you know, a lot of the people who are senators right now, the Mitch McConnells and all those, they're actually not conservative at all. And I know Trump isn't conservative at all. The majority of those who believe in conservative ideology, whether it be libertarianism or just a genuine conservative / Republican, are those who believe in a limited government, because we understand big government normally doesn't lend itself to anything positive. The reason I'm actually a huge advocate for universal health care, the only reason I'm against it is because look at our government. They screw up everything they touch. Do you really want to put that in the hands of people who are so inefficient and ineffective at everything they do? Really? Really? So, but overall, we understand that big government doesn't lend itself to anything positive. So when you have people who are like Trump, and then you view people who are like Clinton, it's just two sides of the same coin. And whether you do it in the on the side of the Republicans or the Democrats, they're just vying for more power. And with that power, you're seeing the ultimate destruction of civil liberties. You're looking at the restriction of freedom of speech, the restriction of the right to bear arms. Even hell, we're even getting to the point where through civil forfeiture and the Fifth Amendment, where through a whole bunch of processes, just they're taking away rights left and right. There's no way for any one person to be able to fight the bureaucratic system that has become the justice system or government.
Well, something that I've also been seeing a lot, especially on Twitter, is people will say, well, I have a grandfather or grandmother that was in Poland or in Warsaw, whatever, or in Bavaria or somewhere when the Nazis were taking over. And like, here's my story. And then it's like this huge thread. And it always ends with, and this is why Nazis shouldn't have rights. And it's like, rationing the protection of the law out to who is and isn't acceptable in the social sphere is a very dangerous concept. I mean, you look at Mao Zedong's China, and it was like, yeah, capitalists, intellectuals, and really anyone successful, just like butcher them, because they don't really they don't want to be in our new society in the Great Leap Forward.
You see a lot of the implementation of what Rousseau would actually call the general will, and you're seeing the entire populist movement move away from rights. They don't want to be able to have freedom anymore, and I think that's one. It's heartbreaking to have the idea that people don't want freedom. And when I say freedom, because it's easy to say that you like freedom when it affects you in a positive manner. But when something makes you uncomfortable, you're the first person to jump at the chance to restrict freedoms to anybody else. America is uncomfortable. We get it. It's supposed to be uncomfortable. The problem lies is when what you're willing to do to another person when you don't like something. Are you willing to live and let live? Or are you going to be the one as an agent of the law and take it into your own hands in order to restrict those freedoms from someone else? And we've already seen what people are willing to do and what they're in the middle of doing. And I think the mainstream media is definitely pushing that. In regard to the neo-Nazis recently, I'm sorry to say, and I know that this is going to come off to all the Antifa people, who a couple of them actually I'm friends with, is, oh yeah, he's a neo-Nazi now. Well, what did you expect to happen? If you're going to play identitarian games, and I mean that as identitarian games where every single little group, black people, gay people, every single person under the sun gets a very specific little grouping, that they all have different rights and different privileges and different everything. Why did you not think that white people were going to do the same thing and then do it in a very violent manner, the same way Black Lives Matter has, the same way the other identitarian movements have, the same way Antifa has? It was bound to happen.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting is this actually comes from academia, the idea that you need to have different rights on like a tier system. Will Kymlicka is the first scholar that comes to mind. He came up with what's known as the progressive stack now. Originally, he had it in a three-tier system. So in America, it would work like this. So it's whites and Asians at the top. So you basically get like the basic cable package, right? And then below that, you have Latinos and Indian Americans and I guess anybody else that's not really like, they don't have slavery to hold against white people. They get like ESPN and like the advanced cable package. And then you have the third tier, which is at the bottom, where they're considered the most oppressed. So that's indigenous people and black people. So they would basically get like
Mom.
Amazon Prime and Netflix for free.
Yeah.
And like they can just watch anything because it differs from like consociationalism, where you have different sectors based on ethnicity where they can govern themselves. This one works as like you don't split the country up, you just give them different rights based on what color their skin is or what nationality they come from and how much of a minority they are. And so this whole idea, well, you know, the black tranny with a girlfriend and a
Yeah.
yeah, they have the most right to speak, and then you go to the next person, and then you go to the next person. Well, that's basically how it works with Kim Licka's multiculturalism tier system, and it's really fucked up. And now it's become like this really bastardized version where they've weaponized it, and it's really ugly to see when you have like just some white guy or even some Latino now like just disagreeing, and they freak the fuck out, where it's like.
Apparently, I only have 15 minutes.
Okay, well,
but I can definitely get back on, and we can kind of stitch it together as needed.
Yeah. So when you have this kind of system where it divides people based on identity, and you get special rights and privileges, as like Iris Marion Young was proposing back in like '85, you make people inherently different. Because the idea of like universal citizenship based on assimilation, which is like a social contract by John Rawls in 1972, they threw that out. They're like, that's racist, that's oppressive, and it's like, what? And by 1975, they were already saying liberalism had its time and it's outdated. So like this whole give them different rights and privileges based on their skin color, like it's 45 years in the making, at least.
Yeah, this is, there was a video by a channel called Very Bad News. It's actually done by a buddy of mine named Gabe Howard. Good guy, by the way. He's actually a Proud Boy, too.
Oh.
Yeah, he's, I don't know if you're a Proud Boy or anything, but I'm not. But there was a recent one from Portland where he was talking to this woman where she basically says that, well, all white people are racist no matter what. And she was like, well, I mean, speak for yourself. I'm not a racist. Are you a racist? Like, yes, I'm racist. And she comes out. I mean, it's a white lady. So like, I guess, I mean, at least she's not hypocritical. And she goes, well, I'm not racist, but all white people are. But you can kind of see this projection of what people think of themselves and what people think about their society. It's monstrous to think of how you believe that all people based upon only the merit of their character being treated as such would be so destructive. And I've spoken about this before, which I've been having kind of a crisis of culture as of recently. And I don't know if anybody's ever heard any of my live streams as of recent, but the crisis of culture, because it would be one thing if it was only Germany, only Canada, only the United States, only France. But it seems that every single society that's based on Western civilization is eating itself alive. Mm-hmm. And that really starts to strike it with a trend with me is the Western civilization, like based on classical liberal values, is it destined to eat itself?
Well, I think it comes from the idea that tolerance is the end goal of liberalism, which it's more of like a consequence. So when you have multiculturalist scholars advocating for like, oh, we'll let them in, no human is illegal and all that stuff. We're like, oh, wait, what was that? Was that me?
No. Oh. Yeah, that's you. Continue.
So you have the multiculturalists scrap classical liberalism and then rebrand it as equity liberalism, or just equity politics, and they kind of ruin South America like that. And you push it far enough to where the actual liberals like Robert Nozick and John Rawls and I've been studying the multiculturalists for way too long. I can't even think of the actual liberals anymore. But these guys actually got thrown out of popular academia in like the 70s because they believed in universality based on assimilation to greater society, whereas the others believed in, well, you get it based on your historic privilege or oppression.
Well, and by the way, you're going with me. I'm actually going to be leaving the building that I'm in. You're going with me. I don't care if you want to or not. You don't have a choice. But ultimately, when we're talking about what's really affecting us in a negative manner, I agree with you that we've started to get rid of anybody who's considered classically liberal. And I know, right? I have a nice university, but we have ultimately abandoned to have under.
We lose you?
Much we don't have any recollection of what it was even like.
Sorry, I lost you there for a second.
It's all right. Well, here, let me give you a call back when I have a little bit better coverage. All right? Is that all right with you?